They didn't wake up one day and decide to respect you. It wasn't a sudden realization. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't growth. It was pressure. They were left with no option. For a long time, they didn't take you seriously. They laughed at your boundaries. They ignored your words. They tested your patience because they thought they could, because you allowed it. Respect was optional to them. And when something is optional, people choose convenience, not principle. They spoke over you, dismissed your concerns, minimized your feelings. And when you reacted, they called you dramatic. When you stayed silent, they called you weak. You couldn't win because the game was never fair. But something changed, not in them, in you. You stopped explaining. That was the first shift. You stopped trying to convince them of your value. You stopped defending your intentions. You stopped chasing understanding. At first, they didn't notice. Why would they? They were used to you adjusting, used to you apologizing, used to you folding first. But then something else changed. You stopped reacting. They tested you again. A joke at your expense. A boundary crossed. A subtle disrespect. Nothing. No argument. No emotional reaction. No long explanation. Just calm. That calm unsettled them because disrespect feeds on reaction, and you stopped feeding it. They never chose to respect you. They were left with no option. Let's be honest. Respect doesn't appear magically. It appears when access becomes limited, when reactions disappear, when consequences exist. You stopped being available, stopped answering immediately, stopped showing up where you weren't valued, stopped participating in dynamics that drained you. Distance did what kindness never could. It forced perspective. They began to notice your absence, and absence has weight. When someone who always tolerated suddenly withdraws, it creates discomfort. They tried the old tactics: guilt, mockery, gaslighting. You've changed. You're too sensitive. It wasn't that serious. But this time, those words didn't land, because you weren't seeking approval anymore. You were seeking peace, and peace doesn't argue. They realized something slowly. You weren't afraid to lose them. When someone stops fearing loss, power shifts. They could no longer threaten you with distance. You were already comfortable alone. They could no longer manipulate your emotions. You controlled them. They could no longer dismiss your boundaries. You enforced them quietly. That's when respect appeared. Not out of admiration, out of necessity. They adjusted their tone. They watched their words. They thought before testing you. Not because they suddenly valued you, but because they realized access was fragile. You didn't raise your voice. You raised your standards. And standards create consequences. You see, people respect what they can lose, not what they can control. For years, they thought you were permanent, so they treated you casually. When permanence disappears, urgency appears. They started observing you differently. Your calm became intimidating. Your silence became strategic. Your distance became powerful. You weren't chasing their validation anymore, and that made them nervous, because validation was their leverage. They began to feel replaceable, and nothing scares insecure people more than being replaceable, so they corrected themselves. Carefully, measured, intentional. But remember this: they didn't choose respect. They adapted to pressure. Pressure created consequences. Consequences created awareness. Awareness created caution. Caution looked like respect. You didn't change to earn their respect. You changed to protect your peace, and peace forced them to adjust. They once interrupted you. Now they listen. They once dismissed your ideas. Now they consider them. They once mocked your ambition. Now they observe it quietly. What changed? Not your worth, their access. Walking away from disrespect is louder than arguing about it. Silence speaks in ways words cannot. They sensed something else too. You were no longer competing, no longer proving, no longer seeking to be seen. You were building, quietly, consistently, independently. Success amplifies silence. Results eliminate debate. When they saw growth without their involvement, it hit differently. They realized they were not necessary, and that realization creates respect. When someone thrives without you, you can't belittle them anymore. They once thought you needed their approval. Now they realize you don't even require their presence. Respect built on fear of losing you is fragile, but it's still respect, because now they understand something. You are not dependent. You are optional, and optional people are treated carefully. They began choosing their words wisely. They began considering your boundaries. They began treating your time as valuable, not because they woke up enlightened, because they saw consequences. You stopped overgiving. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped tolerating patterns. You stopped reacting emotionally to provocation. Consistency replaced emotion, and consistency forces adaptation. They learned slowly, painfully, too late for some, but enough to understand. You were never difficult. You were under-respected. You were never dramatic. You were unheard. You were never weak. You were patient. Patience has limits. They never chose to respect you. They were left with no option, because the version of you that tolerated everything no longer exists. Now, when you walk into a room, energy shifts. You don't demand respect. You embody it. You don't argue for space. You occupy it. You don't prove your value. That quiet certainty, that's what changed everything.